This House is in session.
Speaker, we would like to revert to orders of the day. Orders of the day recommitted.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as you are well aware, the standing orders of the House allow for us to engage in the estimates of revenue and expenditure for a maximum total of 40 hours. This is provided for under Section 66(1) of the standing orders. We are fast approaching those 40 hours. We have even gone so far as, I believe, at this point to have done 7 heads instead of the 6 heads that we had originally indicated. And the additional remaining head, as it stands right now, that we have not been able to get to is the Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training. We therefore propose, so as not to rush members in the number of questions they can ask, and certainly to rush the teams in their responses, to beg your leave to suspend Standing Order 66(1), which would allow the current Ministry of Youth to be able to continue to answer questions in committee, but also to give the Ministry of Education, which will come thereafter, the opportunity to have members continue discussion on the heads. So I therefore beg to move the suspension of Section 66(1) of the Standing Orders.
Thank you. Second up.
The question is that Standing Order 66 subsection 1 be suspended for the remainder only of this debate. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing order is hereby suspended. Prior to the suspension, this House was in Standing Finance Committee. We revert to Standing Finance Committee.
Standing Finance Committee is resumed. When we took the suspension, we were on head 91, Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Community Empowerment. We shall resume that head. Just a reminder to all honorable members and members of the team of Youth, Sports, and Community Empowerment. The Minister has 5 minutes to respond to any particular question and respond. And then we have members of the team, members of this Honourable House. You have 3 minutes on either side to either pose your question or to respond to a question accordingly. Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say a blessed good morning to my colleagues, the staff of the ministry for which we are discussing, and indeed the rest of Barbados who are listening and are supportive of the plans and the policies of this government. Sorry. The plans and policies of this government as we go forward developing communities. Sir, I know yesterday that you said St. Lucie is at the top, but I want to say that St. Thomas is in the heart of Barbados. And therefore, I believe that we deserve to have some of those resources that are being given to be able to help our people to develop, and we are investing in millions of dollars in our schools in particular, in our communities, and I have a difficulty as to why we are not using those facilities after school to empower our communities when we know that there are so many thousands of people in the communities who want to serve. And that is what really built us, and this generation of which I am and sir, of which you are and others, where people in the community gave of their time. They tithed their time, they mentored, they guided, they did everything else for us to be the citizens that we are, and we need to give back to our communities at this time. So I've never heard of any principal or a school board or anybody who has ever built a school and donated it to the people of Barbados. And therefore, I have a serious problem when permission is denied from persons in the community who have the goodwill and want to be able to serve. I acknowledge that in 1981-82, then, under the Right Honourable Prime Minister, who was a Member of Parliament for St. Thomas, a policy decision was made that the community workers, community staff of the community development, that they will keep life aglow. And therefore, they worked from 4:30 in the afternoon until 9:30 in the evening to make sure that when children came home from school and young people, they had access to the various community centers and all that. I know now, and I believe then, the unions had some part to play, but it makes, sir, absolutely no sense. When children are in school during the daytime and our pavilions, our community centers and so are open, with just a janitor and a general worker on the compound. And at 4 o'clock and 4:30, when these children want to go out and exercise and use up the pent energies, that they are closed. As a part of that as well, in the summertime, they were opened all day for the participation. That's where my interest in community life rekindled, really, when persons were assigned or reassigned from the ministries where they were to the community development. And that, if you will give me the permission, sir, people like Peggy McGarry, a wonderful community worker, she worked in culture, Tony Thompson, and those persons are the ones who helped to mentor me during the system and so many thousands of others in St. Thomas. And so I want for us to get back to building our communities. I also want to say, sir, that we have a culture of persons now who believe, yes, you have to be a member of the union, and if the union says so, it is so. But if we're looking at it where when we leave our workplace and we go home, that we have an outstanding role to play in mentoring, in guiding, in protecting our communities, it is so sad. I was a member of the executive of the Barbados Union of Teachers, but I never tolerated nonsense, because I felt that teachers were the major ones who should guide. And so, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that I have some communities that they have so much been denied. From 2008 until now, under the government that I am a member of, I have no proper community projects. And it is not that I did not write, I did not call, I did not request. I do not even have a youth commissioner right now. The permanent secretary would have spoken yesterday, I believe it was the permanent secretary, about the former magistrate's court at District D. I have with me even a letter where the Attorney General, the Honourable Attorney General, determined that they no longer have uses for the District D Magistrates Court that was the social center for St. Thomas for so many years since, and therefore it can be vested in community development. This is now, sir, almost the 4th year of the request for just vesting it into the community development department. Nothing has happened despite my trials. And therefore, I want to know for sure, can we have it done when 150 new houses have been put in Rock Hall content, another 65 on the opposite side, all Rock Hall content, Pori Springs, all those communities, they have nowhere to get involved, but I have scores of people lined up who want to offer programs. I just want for the community development to share the projects with us, and community people will work it as we did when we were growing up to make a difference. And so I want to find out, what action will there be within the next few weeks? What action will there be for the Hill House project on the hill at Dunscombe that the rural development many years ago assisted after the land was given by a magnate? I want to know what is the plan for there. I want to know from the National Sports Council, with all these millions of dollars, what is going to happen when it comes to putting the right person in the right job. I had the unfortunate experience, I wasn't going to say it here, but I shall, because I believe in standards and good discipline. When I came by the Bridgefield Pavilion this morning, people were clearing it. They know that I will talk today, so somebody came. And the persons are moving the wheelbarrows of what they have cleaned up onto the property of a private person right opposite the pavilion. And I had to stop and say, ma'am, where are you going with that? I thought that the council had trucks and other equipment to remove that kind of debris. We cannot be doing illegal dumping by a government entity. And so, sir, I want to know what plans there are for me to get a youth commissioner, to get the resources that are required for the pavilions. And the final one, sir, I don't have to ask any more questions after this one. The final one, at Warren's, over in the Arthur C area, there is an open field where the young men will play basketball and football. This is not the first time I've requested that the derelict vehicles on that property be removed. I do not care if they belong to my dead mother and father. Nobody with a consciousness in any community at all would want to park those vehicles and leave them there for a year, 2 years, or whatever, because the young people need to get out the pent-up energies. They need to play their basketball and their football. And finally, I want to thank the former Honourable Minister and all others who would have been out there pioneering to improve the standards and to offer services to people across the length and breadth of Barbados, particularly the summer camps where it used to be free. Now we are paying people to be directors and all that. We are taking away what served us in our community through the Scouts, through the Brownies, through the 4-H, and all those agencies that built our communities and had them safe, where we knew everybody, we knew the needs of others, and we targeted them to help them to be able to be empowered and to transfer some of their knowledge and skills for that help. And sir, I wish to get some answers. I'm a very unhappy person because I am uncomfortable that if I write to agencies, and that's not the only one, or any other individual, even the ordinary public, to make a query, that you do not get answers, nor do you get actions. I am extremely disturbed about it. I believe that respect is due to everybody, and therefore, I just want to know what is happening to the dear parish that I love, that almost 11,000 people were eligible to vote, but you're not talking about the population of youth who need some guide to help them along the way, that they can become the good citizens and go back and tithe their time and skills in the community to help to build Barbados. And when you start from the heart, sir, it will spread out. If you kill the heart, sir, well then everything is dead and gone. And those are my comments and my requests, please, with respect. Although I thank the council for the work that it has been doing in other areas, I really do have that personal concern, and that is the request from the people of St. Thomas to be able to get the services that are due to them, not only as taxpayers, but as citizens of this country. And I wish to thank you, sir, sincerely.
Good morning. Honourable member, before I attempt to respond to you, can you please indicate what is the Hill House project and what exactly, or the other one I will deal with. Can you please indicate what is the Hill House project?
Hill House is a community a building on the top of Dunscombe Hill that serves Dunscombe, Canefield, Aricot sometimes, Spring Farm, Pori Spring, and Hillaby Farmers. And nothing has happened there within the last few years except the summer camp that I begged for during the last administration, and it was one of the most successful to glue those people together. Absolutely nothing is happening now. And if the honorable member will allow me to call the name of the person who donated the land, although I don't think it is necessary, it was part of that plantation at Canefield that donated the land for the Hill House project to take place there.
Thank you. Let me start at the top of your intervention, your questions. In relation to the community centers not being open in the evening, I would have mentioned yesterday that plans are definitely on the way to have a look at how we can have our community centers open and what I might term prime time, which is in the evening portion of the day. But there is a need still to have those community centers open during the day because you and I are fully aware that there's a level of unemployment within all of our constituencies. So hence, a number of programs, whether it be the ones using the computer or other programs, also happen during the course of the day. So we need to have the community centers open during the day as well. But that request that you would have made to have them open in the later hours is something that we need to address. It is something that will be addressed. In terms of community activities and your request to have a youth commissioner connected to your constituency, I'm told that there was a youth commissioner attached to your constituency, but he moved on. So we now have to fill that particular spot to have a youth commissioner within your constituency. You mentioned about the National Sports Council having to put the right person in the right place or in the right job. I'm really not sure what you meant by that. In terms of the field at Warrens, yes, we are going to put some more attention or place some more attention on what is happening with the facilities under this ministry, because I mentioned yesterday about scheduled maintenance, and to that extent, I'm also thinking about the upkeep of some of our playing fields. So rest assured that the ministry will be looking to see how best we can clear these vehicles that you're talking about that are creating some angst for you and members of the community. If it is on our property, we will endeavor to speak to the relevant ministry to have them removed. In terms of the summer camps, we will be looking to see how best in a COVID environment that we can restart the summer camps. But please note that subsequent to this administration taking office, there are no more paid personnel at the summer camps. We have gone back to the days that you are familiar with, Honourable Member. But to answer some of your questions as well, I will ask the Director of the National Sports Council to come in and to provide some feedback on some of your concerns in relation to the field at Warrens. You also mentioned the vesting of, I believe, the police post in us. I am not sure that we are the ministry that is supposed to trigger that. I think we may need to speak to the Ministry of Housing, and I will endeavor to do that on your behalf in terms of having that particular property vested on the community development or or this ministry, so that you can have your outlet for training in your constituency. But I will now ask the Director of the National Sports Council to further shed some light on your concerns.
Good morning, and Neil Murrell, National Sports Council Director. And let me thank the Honourable Member for St. Thomas for her intervention this morning on behalf of the residents in St. Thomas. The National Sports Council agrees wholeheartedly that communities are at the heart and the thrust of our movement forward for sports. And we also agree that mentorship is important, and the fact that you have a number of individuals who are willing and ready to accommodate individuals on evenings in sport is critical for that development within the community. And we will work, of course, hand in glove with all communities as well as in St. Thomas. Now, what was raised about Bridgefield this morning, I will have to do some investigations on that. Our staff are instructed to take away the grass and so on. For me to hear that it's being dumped on somebody else's pasture is very disturbing. But we will look into that, Honourable Member, and we would also look into the issue of the cars at Warren's. I and my team, we want to ensure that all of the members of Parliament are comfortable within their community and all of the issues are dealt with. And we are not going to run away from any issue whatsoever. And we're going to deal with the issues that affect sports and affect the community. So you can be assured, Honourable Member, that over the next few weeks that we will be dealing squarely, first of all, with our staff in terms of the dumping, and we will be writing letters and so on to deal with the issues at Warren's. I have to do some investigation on that as well. But you can be assured, Honourable Member, that we will be looking into those issues. Thank you so much.
Does that answer your question, Honourable Member? You can have a follow-up question.
I wish to find out what plans there are. I know that some of our pavilions will be lit at night. It is one of the most wonderful things to happen because we witnessed in the time of my predecessor, now retired Sir David, where there were tensions in two communities, young men ready to fight and all that and kill one another. And he entered that kind of fracas to be able to settle the matter by asking for the two groups to come together and determine that we didn't need any police officers present. And those two communities settled. They had a basketball match, they had a football match. I want to commend the council for the efforts of having to light these various facilities, but I also at the same time would wish to get some refurbishment, particularly for the community center on top of the same hill away from the former district, the magistrate's court. I spoke about the population, but the facility there is so small, it can't hold 15 people on the interior. The pavilion is useful because it's a strong cricket team in there. And so therefore, I would like to know when something could be done. I know the bathroom is leaking, the water is running downstairs. There's some dispute with the neighbor and land that the government would have taken before and not have resolved it. I would like for matters along that line to be pursued by the council and to be resolved so that we can bring an element of comfort and so around those communities. I probably will get an answer to that and then I will give one other final comment, or I will make the final comment now. Let me stop there, sir, so that I can get a response.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I am aware about the level of repairs that we need to carry out in relation to our plants across the country. We are going to schedule we're going to put together a schedule for repairs in terms of how we treat to the ones that could be deemed as being priority. But there will be a schedule, Honourable Member, in terms of repairs. So again, rest assured that it is not a case that we are trying to victimize anyone. I'm not saying that you were being pointed in that direction. But there's a need for us to repair these facilities. I am aware of all of the activities that can happen and that are not happening as a result of the downtime from our buildings. So your facility will be sorted in the quickest possible time, but we will schedule that repair list in terms of how we go about dealing with all of these structures across the country.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank the minister for his valiant efforts. I know he's new in the business, he's hit the ground running. I want to commend him for those efforts that he's making. My final comment is to do with the community technology program. The one at Holy Innocents Church is a young one. It was fairly well subscribed to. I know that because of COVID, that facility would have been closed. But I'm not asking now for St. Thomas alone, I'm asking for across the country because the technology is changing every week, and I would like to know what plans there are by the department to be able to have upgrades done or investigations to determine what has to be changed, because at the end of the day, technology is the route everybody goes. And you know, I'm going to put in a plug for senior citizens again, because seniors need to get that opportunity to be on the cutting edge in the same way. And Holy Innocents is a good location. I want to know what plans there are, especially when the equipment will need the upgrades, as I said, across the country. And I would like to find out if all of the technology locations, are the computers still there? Have they been stolen? What has happened to them? In the interim, since the facilities were all closed, I was of the opinion that there will be persons doing the investigations. I don't know, so I'll get the answers this morning to determine what is and what is not, what about the safety of them, and the plans going forward. Because I would like to get the community development plan for St. Thomas so that we can unravel it with the team of good citizens who want to help. But if I have no plan, and I know nothing of what is happening in the parish since 2008, I would like now. So 2008, and 10 brought us to 18, and 3.5 brought us to 2022. I am not going to be the outside child for anybody, because the people are calling me, and they know that we have always had standards. And I'm not saying that I'm being victimized. I'm talking about the lethargy that I recognize that has never been like that before my childhood, which was many, many scores of years ago. And so I would just like to get some answers there, sir.
Thank you, Honourable Member. To address your question, I will ask the Chief and our Program Coordinator to provide some information in relation to your concerns about your constituency. What I would say to you is that it was mentioned yesterday by the coordinator that we have probably in excess of 8,000 persons who are currently on a waiting list. In addition to that, she would have mentioned that persons from outside of Barbados were even sourcing the training program. So it is not a case where we are limiting the training programs under the community technology program to persons who are deemed to be youth, but we have extended that to those persons who too want to get involved in the program that are outside of the age that we are mandated to look after. So you will get some response from the chief, and you'll get some response from the program coordinator in relation to the questions that you asked about safety, the questions that you asked about plans for your constituency.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, the Honourable Ms. Ford, MP for St. Thomas. Thank you for that question, and I'm happy to be able to endorse the fact that despite no centre in St. Thomas, the...
Madam Chief, would you please speak a little louder, come a bit closer to the mic so that we can hear you clearly at this end? Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak about the concerns that the Honourable Member for St. Thomas has raised. The machines at the Holy Innocent Pavilion, to the best of my knowledge, we are constantly monitoring those, and they are safe from the reports that I've received. The program coordinator can give you some more details on that as soon as I refer to her. The CTP program has been rolled out to members of St. Thomas, again, to the best of my knowledge. CTP coordinator can expand on that. Plans for the CTP in St. Thomas includes, plans for CTP for the whole island. Registrations will be received and will be processed. In terms of the upgrade, we would have mentioned yesterday that I think we mentioned it yesterday, that there are plans to upgrade all the community centers that are not now resource centers, to upgrade them so that they can offer at least a minimum level of CTP training in them. The centers all now have internet facilities and they have Wi-Fi, but some of them are too small. I'm sorry. Some of them are too small to accommodate large labs to do the training in. So that's why we were using Holy Innocents. Let me add, though, that the facility at Holy Innocents does not have a dedicated member of staff, and that is similar to some of our own community centers. The number of community centers that we have outstripped the number of personnel to man those centers, and this is why we are looking, as the Deputy Prime Minister, Honourable Deputy Prime Minister mentioned yesterday, we're looking at buying in services from community residents. So I will let Mrs. Marshall Griffith, the program coordinator for the Community Technology Program, come in at this time so she can speak a little bit more about what is going on in St. Thomas and the rollout of the CTP program for residents in that area. Thank you.
Good morning. Bridget Marshall Griffith, Program Coordinator, Community Development Department. The last program we had, which was online, but I am happy to say that a number of persons from the parts of St. Thomas did apply to take the program. Most of them, if not all, were accommodated. So we had and have a number of persons from the parts of St. Thomas actually taking the community technology program. We have also allowed the church, have given the church access to the computers. So we have told the church that if there's any persons from the community that want to go into the lab to use the computer for any reason, homework, research, they can use the computers. So we have not restricted the use of the computers, although we don't have any staff there. We have a very good relationship with the church, and they are allowed to use the computers at will. The last servicing we did for this financial year, those computers are also serviced. So those computers, most of them are in good working order. Of course, before we start any courses, we usually service the computers and do upgrades. So those computers would be serviced and upgraded, because for the summer, we want to go back into the center and have the Ace for Teams program. We had a very good Ace for Teams program there 2 years ago, where the youth from the community did the computer training, and they also won a number of the prizes at the closing ceremony. So we do have intention of going back into Holy Innocents and having programs there. If the program is in the center, we would also cater for persons from the community to come into the center and do their classes. Thank you.
Honourable Member, has that answered your question, St. Thomas?
I know so much, sir, that I would rather keep quiet. I wish to thank the honourable member for giving me that privilege to speak, and to thank those officers who have fought valiantly to be able to give answers that I know don't fit what I happen to know, because I'm a community worker and I'm on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mention is made of a road tennis dialogue, and I've seen efforts to revitalize that sport, to rekindle interest in that sport in this country over the past 3 years or so. Now, this sport is being touted as an indigenous sport, benefits including community building and such like are being mentioned. But what I'm seeing is evidence that this sport may very well, even before it is revitalized, is beginning to die. So my question has to do with what the Sports Council is doing. What is the Sports Council doing to ensure that younger persons, those 7-year-olds and those 9-year-olds, what are they doing to encourage young persons, to train young persons? Are there any policies in place to engage the Ministry of Education in a collaborative effort to have coaching done in schools? Maybe part of the curriculum where road tennis is included. I taught at a school where we had a road tennis program, but that was because there was a teacher who played road tennis. My understanding, and I speak subject to correction, that there's only one road tennis coach to service schools in Barbados, and there are at least 68 primary schools and 21 secondary schools in this country. So I'm sure that one coach cannot adequately train or serve so many schools. What plans are in place to perhaps increase the training of coaches? And are there any plans to work with the Ministry of Education to get to build this sport in schools? Because if we don't get the young ones, this sport will die. It's difficult to learn to play a sport as an adult, or as we say, learn to play big. It's easier to capture those 7-year-olds and 8-year-olds, and so that in 10 years we have a cadre of young persons who are talented, who are trained in the sport. So I just want to know what's being done in the schools, and what we're doing in terms of our coaching cadre, staff, so we can have an adequate number of persons to really develop this sport if we want to raise the profile of this sport in this country.
Thank you for the question, Honourable Member. Road tennis is in good hands. Let me start there. Last year, Independence, there was a national competition put on by this ministry that spanned, well, I said national, so you understand. In terms of the school setting, I believe, and the Director of Sports will come and share information in relation to what is being done at the National Sports Council. The National Sports Council is tasked with development of sports, and that is all sports. And if there's a need for us to strengthen areas to make sure that road tennis is placed where it should be, then that will happen. Without going deep into what is contained in the sporting policy, I will say to you that there's a distinct effort to ensure that road tennis is kept alive and well in this country. We have the test match that is coming here to Barbados, and I have asked the sports development officer to speak to those persons in charge of cricket, and you will see, Honourable Member, that during the break at test match cricket at Kensington Oval, that road tennis will be on display. And the fact that you have a wide scope of media that will come to Kensington Oval to do their reporting will help to showcase what is happening as it relates to road tennis. So rest assured that road tennis is alive and well and will remain so for a very, very long time, because this ministry will ensure that all of the necessary things are in place for the longevity of road tennis. But I will allow the Director of Sports of the National Sports Council to speak to you.
Thank you very much for your question, and I'm not so sure about the observation, but thank you very much for your question, Honourable Member of Parliament for St. Andrew, again, Neil Merle, National Sports Council. I share the Minister's optimism regarding road tennis in Barbados. Just let me say that the National Sports Council, in conjunction with our ministry, we have a inward, in development terms, we have an inward and an outward strategy for road tennis. Our inward strategy has already started. Over the last 6 to 8 months, we have painted over 190 road tennis courts across the length and breadth of Barbados. And to support that strategy, we are, as explained yesterday, undertaking a community sports training program, which should start around mid-April for 10 weeks, which will see road tennis being part and parcel of the training and coaching in that program. The persons who will be conducting the training and the coaching, one will be part of this, part of those persons who were certified as road tennis coaches in 2016. And before the coaches go into the actual program, we are also going to be undertaking another level of certification and coaching through the Barbados Olympic Association. There's also, as the minister would have rightly alluded to, competitions. The independence tournament that would have started, would have been completed in November 2021. And the ministry and its team is working towards a national tournament in, I think, starting around April or thereabouts. I think the team is in the process of undertaking the details of that tournament. But I think you also have alluded to the issue of road tennis and development in schools. There's already, yes, we do have one road tennis coach. More often than not, the National Sports Council sends out forms, and those forms, when we get back the forms, road tennis is on our calendar based on requests from the schools. But we have, in terms of our planning, we have said that we want to go out and have a greater outreach to the schools so that we can get more primary schools involved and also more secondary schools involved. I had alluded also to the fact yesterday that we have signaled to the Ministry of Education that we want to have a deeper and greater discussion surrounding physical education in schools and sports in schools, of which road tennis would be a part of it. So that's the inward strategy. So we also, as I said, have an outward strategy, and that outward strategy speaks to the promotion of road tennis through tours, both regionally and to North America. I think the minister would have alluded to the fact that we just held a tour to Dubai in December 2021 in conjunction with Invest Barbados. I think to add to the promotion, when we do these tours, we need to of course, follow up with the Ministry of Education and the sports department in those countries to concretize the promotion. So the overall picture for road tennis is quite secure. We are building a base, both at the level of the primary schools and through our summer program. So I'm very comfortable with the direction that road tennis is taking. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. My next question has to do with the facilities, certainly the facilities in St. Andrew, facilities in Orange Hill, where we have a hard court that has been allowed to fall into a state of disrepair. The bleachers are long gone. The nets are long gone. The hoops are long gone. The lights have fallen down. I think we have one more light remaining. There used to be at least 4 lights on that side. Just recently, we would have hosted the very same road tennis competition that you mentioned. And after a sprinkling of rain, we almost had to cancel the competition, and not because we didn't have a tent, which was factual, but because the surface of the court was so covered with moss that after it got wet, it was almost deemed unsafe for players to continue. We had to scrub it. So my question is, in terms of the maintenance of these facilities, if you can speak to the maintenance, in terms of the maintenance schedule, how is it that these facilities can be allowed to get to this state? What are the plans going forward? Obviously, it cannot continue like this. We cannot have a situation where we have facilities there, but the facilities are not being maintained, and hence they are of little use for the people in the community. What is the maintenance plan going forward?
Thank you, Honourable Member. I would have mentioned at the top of this that we are looking to put a maintenance schedule in place. The issue of maintenance is a concern all over the country. It is also a concern for me in my constituency as well. Things will change. Things will change in relation to how we treat to plant. Things will change in terms of scheduled maintenance, whether it be community development or the National Sports Council. Things will change. But I will ask the Superintendent of Works to speak to you in relation to your concerns about Orange Hill and St. Andrew.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Honourable Member for St. Andrew. Nicholas Matthias, Senior Superintendent of Works at the National Sports Council. Speaking directly to your question about Orange Hill Court, yes, it has gone through a period of what you said, disrepair, and I will not run away from that topic. It has fallen into that state. But subsequently to that, since I've started at the Sports Council as well, most recently in about 8 months ago coming in, we would have gotten a partnership sponsor type of deal or relationship with an international business conglomerate, that's the best way to put it, that they sponsor NBA teams. They have branches here in Barbados, and Orange Hill, the court, the entire court, has been named and identified as one of the facilities that they will take under their wing and sponsor. So sooner rather than later, we hope to get Orange Hill back on its feet, and even better than it was before in its heyday. And you know what I mean when I say heyday, the lawn tennis that used to be played, the active netball teams, and the road tennis, yes. As an offset of the current lighting program, we know that the lights on the court aren't up to scratch, and we will have those lights replaced and put back in action as they have been in the past. And also in tying into the sponsorship that we are looking to get for the facility, more or less we will get your facility and others, but specifically talking about Orange Hill as you asked, back in shape and in a very soon time frame as opposed to a lengthy time frame. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm certainly happy to hear that that facility will be spruced up. And just to mention that the lights on the playing field on the opposite side of the road will also need some attention. A side note, that facility in Orange Hill, the hard court that we're discussing here, it has never been officially open, and for some reason that is something that annoys the people in that community, that it was never officially opened. I don't know if you were aware of this, but I would wish that after it's been renovated, refurbished, spruced up, rehabilitated, that there could be some kind of official opening of that facility for the good people of Orange Hill. But I move on to St. Andrew proper, where in Rock Hall, there used to be a pavilion, hard court and pavilion. But for years, that hard court and that pavilion, the pavilion was allowed to not only fall into a state of disrepair, but it fell down flat, and it was never repaired or replaced. Can you tell me if there are any plans to rebuild a pavilion or any kind of facility for the people of Rock Hall? It is not a big community, but there are persons up there who have never known any kind of facility, because the closest facility is I believe is in Black Bess, but for a young person living in Rock Hall, Black Bess may not be that far in terms of distance, but a young lady will have to traverse through cane fields, large cane fields, to get from Rock Hall to Black Bess. Are there any plans in the pipeline for doing something for the good people of Rock Hall? And let me just, because it could almost be seen as a cognate question, so let me just continue and look at Belle Plaine, and you can answer both in your response. Now, Belle Plaine, I believe what now obtains as a community center in Belle Plaine is a shame and a disgrace, especially for a community that has produced so many outstanding sports persons in so many different disciplines. What we have there is not good enough. It's a shame. And I'm not surprised that the former member for St. Andrew never had made a principal decision not to have anything to do with it. I'm not going to say that I will continue in that same vein, because I can see there's use for it. But I believe that there were greater plans in store for St. Andrew, and the people in Belle Plaine, not St. Andrew, Belle Plaine, and people deserve something better. Similar to what obtained in St. Thomas, there was a Belle Plaine development plan. I believe it was approved by the then and now Attorney General, and it would have included a police station, a post office, welfare department, community center, and a pavilion. All of these services that have since exodus. There's since been an exodus of these services, every single one of them, from the Belle Plaine area. And under the previous administration, they refused to do anything about the development plan. But
Honourable member, you need to wind up. You are past your
my question is
a lot of time. Put your question to the floor.
Are there any plans?
Thanks.
One, for if the Rock Hall area, in terms of rebuilding some form of community center or pavilion, or are there any plans for this multi-purpose center that was once planned for the Belle Plaine area, that the people of Belle Plaine, St. Andrew, and all the surrounding areas are so desperately in need of?
Thank you, Honourable Member. You've extended the mandate of this ministry by asking us to build a police station. The truth is that I have said before that there will be a groundswell of sports across this country. We need to move in relation to the grassroots level to have sports in every single area where sports can be played. It makes no sense to have that particular focus and not have the facilities in the requisite areas to deal with the sports. You've mentioned Rock Hall and you've mentioned the whole St. Andrew area as being without facilities. I will allow the superintendent and the director of the Sports Council to come back to you, but rest assured that wherever we can do what is necessary to bring sports to the communities, we will do that. I am aware that we need to have facilities at those locations for several different reasons. If you're having competition, persons need to change, people need to use washroom facilities. So we will do what is necessary. The task may be great, but we are prepared. You have heard over the last day, yesterday and today, officers after officers from this particular ministry speak with a level of clarity in terms of what their plans are or what they're engaging, and that will continue. So rest assured that the resources that you require, as long as our budget would permit us to do such, we will endeavor to have your facilities up and running again in St. Andrew, as in other constituencies across this country. But I will allow, like I said, the superintendent and the director of sports to speak to you. If it is something that is within budget, then it will be done.
Thank you again, Honourable Member for St. Andrew. Let me say that I'm not aware of the pavilion at Rock Hall, our community center. It may have been a community center, and it may have predated when it came to the council. Not sure of that. I know there's a hard court just off the beaten track in Rock Hall. Our focus in St. Andrew so far has been at isolation. We will be looking at farmers and as well as Belle Plaine and Conrad Hunt. But as the minister quite rightly said, these things have to fall within a particular budget. But we will look at them in terms of providing some type of relief for you and the community in St. Andrew. Let me take the opportunity at this time, now that I have the floor, to congratulate a member of your constituency, Deandra Jalisa Shakira Dottin, on her outstanding performance last night. And let me also congratulate the constituency of St. Michael's Southeast, with Haley Matthews scoring her first century last night in the World Cup. So there's a lot of promise for our young people, and there's a lot of hope and opportunity, and we will add to the mix of that. Thank you.
I will ask the chief to speak to Chief Community Development Officer to speak to Belle Plaine in relation to what is happening there with that facility.
Good morning again, Sandra Greenwich, Chief Community Development Officer. Thank you, Minister. I share Dr. Springer, the Honourable MP for St. Andrew. I share his concern in respect to Belle Plaine. We have been looking at that as a ministry, as one of the priorities for rebuilding. As you can see, our hands are full. I did say yesterday we have 41 community centers, and there are a number of communities and constituencies where the need for new community facilities is quite severe. So Belle Plaine is definitely on the radar. And you should be hearing some more about that as soon as it's feasible. Like our minister said, funds has a lot to do with it. But Belle Plaine is one of the 2 new buildings that we are giving close attention to for construction. Let me say something about Rock Hall, though. Yes, it is sad that Rock Hall has been in a state of disrepair, and like the Honourable MP said, is really no longer at the site. That too is a cause of concern for us. And recently, a decision was taken that we really need to do an assessment, a community assessment, to determine what the community needs are in the area so that we can build up a facility that is fit for purpose. So that is the plan, and that is in train, and I am happy, we will be very happy to engage the MP, Dr. Springer, Honourable MP for St. Andrew. We'll be happy to engage him in these discussions and to have him facilitate us in determining what is the best suited facility or facilities to go back to at that Rock Hall facility. Thank you.
Thank you. I try not to use words like neglect and abandon and forsaken in my questions, but I also noticed that in your response that you struggled. In some cases, your team struggled to not use similar words in your response. But I'm thankful for the information. I'm thankful to know, and I'm sure the people of St. Andrew, people of Belle Plaine, the people of Rock Hall, and the people in Orange Hill are thankful to know that some attention is going to be paid to the facilities in our communities, our respective communities. St. Andrew has too much talent. Too much talent. And we were reminded of that talent just now, when mention was made of Ms. Doughton, a product of St. Andrew, who produced that final over this morning, and I watched it live. That final over that gave West Indies women victory over New Zealand. So I look forward to working closely with the ministry to ensure that we get some much needed attention, some of the love that's being shared around. We want to see it return to St. Andrew. I thank you.
Honourable Member for St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A blessed good morning to the team, Minister and his team from the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment. Let me begin though. My mother said to me last night, she heard me, and the minister said passion and I said pain. She said to me, she didn't hear me thank those persons that I praised daily when I came to the house for cuckoo, mainly on a Fridays, but I want to publicly put on the record to thank the team that I worked with for 18 months. I don't know if I did it yesterday, but I want to do it this morning to thank that team who supported this government in its effort to build out sports, youth development, and of course, who sought to empower communities in a very difficult period, that period of 2020 to 2022, during the COVID-19 pandemic. And my first question, I'm going to give 3 one time. The question with respect to the youth, job opportunities and training. We have a very vibrant youth department within the ministry, and I know there have been a lot of training, next step training initiative, Get Heard, Youth Advanced Core, excellent opportunities. But I want to know Minister, it is something that we discuss, but I want you to tell the public. If you speak to every young person, or most young persons in this country, the question or the one thing they will say to you, the lacking job opportunities. And we know there's some new industries, the bioeconomy, renewable energy. There's some new robotics. There's some new industries that we want to build out. And I believe that the time has come for us to broaden our scope within the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment. And I know we've started to increase the scale so we get more persons trained. But I would like you to tell the country and the Lord Chamber, I know you have plans. What are the plans and what are the new training opportunities and job opportunity prospects that we have within that ministry, and how we're going to increase the number of persons trained? And I know you have a plan. That's the first question. But I go back to the bugbear in the room. And yesterday I used some words, goblin and bugbear. But I heard the member from St. Andrew, and I heard the member for St. Michael Southeast yesterday, and the word I will use this morning is speed wobbling. Some questions were asked, but the answers were not really direct and specific to the questions asked, the answers. I made that statement because I'm going to ask a question. And I'm going to just lay a few cards on the table quickly. We have gone through a period within the Community Development Department where maids, contract maids, were not paid for months. Persons would call the permanent secretary crying. They would call me crying. They've been evicted, and what we can do when we check persons not paid for months. We have gone through where hard-working staff, officers' travel allowance were not paid to them in tough times. We have gone through, and I mentioned it yesterday, and it's worth repeating, bears to the world show, persons not paid up to now for a show that was held last year. Yes, member for St. Michael South Central, they were not paid, yes. And we have gone through many of these cases, and I am asking, Minister, the time may be right for an audit to be done within that department, Community Development Department, to look at the business processes and the systems to see what are the bottlenecks. And, from that audit, I think that we can seek to come up with an action plan to address. I sought to do it, but time ran out on me. And I'm asking if you would be prepared, Minister, to engage the Community Development Department in an audit. I'm not talking about unethical behavior. I'm talking about business process re-engineering, whereby we can seek to address our public and our stakeholders in a more timely manner, with more haste and more urgency. So I put that on the table, and I would like your response. Those are my two questions.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I'm building on your foundation, sir. I'm building on your foundation. Let me deal with your first question in terms of training. Yesterday, you would have heard the extent of our programs. You would have heard from the Barbados Youth Advanced Corps, the fantastic work that is happening there. And these officers will come back and speak to you. You've heard from the Principal Youth Development Officer in relation to what is happening in that segment. You heard from the Community Technology Officer, Ms. Griffith, in relation to the programs that are happening there. In terms of expanding the program, I agree with you wholeheartedly. A number of these programs are housed at one specific location, i.e. the ministry. The employment programs that you mentioned, the cohorts are probably about 16, maybe 20 maximum. And I have asked that we now look at training in satellite locations. We need to move the programs forward because these programs are showing that they're very, very important in terms of how we treat to preparing our young people for the world of work. It is really a fantastic thing that is happening within the ministry. I have asked since coming here that we no longer provide programs that speak to certificates of participation, that we now have certificates that are certified, certificates that carry some weight, that will provide some in terms of the entry into the world of work, or if persons want to further studies, that these particular certificates that we offer for the programs that we're doing, and we're offering quality programs, I might say, that they should now reach a stage where all of our programs, every single one of our programs, be it housed at the ministry or at community centers or within the community, that there's a level of certification that is attached to these particular programs. So yes, we will endeavor to expand the training so that in anyone, you heard Mr. Haynes identifying the fact that 900, I believe that was the number that is being looked at from the Barbados Youth Advanced Score. You would have heard him in absolute detail outlining the success ratio for the different programs and what is happening in that particular area in the department. So they will probably come back and share some information with you in relation to the training. But yes, we intend to extend and expand the training opportunities for the young persons across this country. It is the only way that we're going to reach them, is the only way that we can provide an opportunity to create second chances for those people who, in some cases, made a mistake. In some cases, they have absolutely no control in terms of where they're at. So the training will be expanded through satellite locations wherever we can find adequate facilities to run these training programs. We will do that. The Honourable Member for St. Thomas would have indicated that schools are planted within communities, and hence we will, as much as possible, communicate with the Ministry of Education to work in partnership to make sure that these programs are happening. Now, you mentioned the concerns, a list of concerns in relation to the Community Development Department. I am new at the ministry, and I need to be able to satisfy myself that when I look at the Department of Community Development and do my own analysis of what is going on, a particular direction that I may go. You have referred to the audit. Maybe that is something that is that should be done, but I need to satisfy myself that these are the things that should be put in place. I have been here yesterday and today, and I have heard the amount of concerns that are coming from my colleagues in relation to what is happening at community development. Only this morning I had a question from the MP for St. John in relation to the community centers in St. John, and I still need to answer myself in relation to that. So rest assured, Honourable Member, that we will make the necessary changes. I will make the necessary changes that I believe we need to make in the ministry to make everything fit for purpose, because I am cognizant of the demographic that we serve, and if we need to get it right in the ministry, we will get it right in the ministry. And I can assure you that, like I said, after my analysis of what is happening at the community development, decisions will be made in terms of how we treat to work going forward. But I would want one or two of the officers to come back again and share with you.
Honourable Member.
Yes, sure.
I don't think you have the luxury of that kind of time, and I'm saying to all honourable members, we are about at the maximum time for this particular head to be before the House. I am asking members to operate like a helicopter, not like a 747. You have to lift and land. I know you may be a bit uncomfortable based on the number of persons that we have here, and we have to operate by the rules of the House. So therefore, be crisp in your responses, and also equally be crisp in your landing. Other than that, it will disenfranchise other members who have not asked a question as yet, who would no doubt have questions from their constituents, and we want to put it to the floor, so to the team. So be advised and please cooperate accordingly. Thank you.
Let me land minutes, Mr. Chairman. I will land quickly. Minister, I heard you, and you have our full support as a team. The ministry, the officers, they have our full support as well, especially my full support. I enjoyed my time with that ministry. But I want to say to you, as I land, don't take too long to determine or come up with a plan of action for community development department. Our people in communities are indeed suffering. And if I took too long, I don't want you to take that long. I land now, Mr. Chairman.
Honourable member for the City of Bridgetown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to start by again thanking the ministry and commend you for all that you've done. You could pat yourselves on the back. And I want to request that you start to do the things that you're not. I want to pick up from my colleague from St. Thomas when she talked about the goodwill of the persons in the community and those groups wanting to do good by their nation. Yesterday I asked about the Next Step initiative. I went home and I reflected, and I recognized that there was nothing there to reflect on. So I'm going to come with different questions in a different way, probably to get to the same destination. And the pointed questions are as follows. I only have two questions, but I'm doing it this way. 1A, how much money do we have budgeted in this financial year for the Next Step initiative? 1B, who is responsible for that initiative? 1C, when will it be rolled out or rolled out again? Because my understanding is that it started, it paused, some money was sent the wrong place, had to be recovered, and I have no idea what is going on with it. And I want to impress the importance of this question to all honourable members and all persons listening. If you follow the Royal Barbados Police Force, now called the Barbados Police Service, you would understand there are 55 known blocks and recorded blocks in this country. So we have a mechanism where people can be known to get up to mischief, sometimes liming, sometimes mischief. But we do not have 55 known youth groups or community groups in this country being as active. So the Next Step initiative, as I understand it, is a way for mass-based training, like the member for St. Thomas talked about, in terms of growing out community groups and allowing them to do the important things that need to be done. There's a guy I know of in St. Joseph who's a rally car driver, and he's used that to build out a youth group. I know a guy at the police service working with the horses, and he built out a camp. A guy in my community, mechanic. A guy from New York police service that worked with the Broken Windows initiative to turn New York around in its darkest days, operating here. And I believe that the Next Step initiative, as I advised in the early stages, should be used, those community groups, those youth groups existing. We have to build new ones, but we need to support those existing ones. So these questions formed under one question about the Next Step initiative more directly. I would like to start with that, and I'll ask the second one time so that we can move along briskly. I heard the minister and the director of youth speak about this youth policy. My understanding the youth policy goes back to the 90s when I went to the then Minister of Youth, now the Honourable Prime Minister. And her position back then is that we didn't even need a youth policy because we were operating in such a way beyond those countries with a youth policy. We've moved to a stage where we now have a youth policy, and every once in a while, like you hear about the National Youth Forum under last administration, we hear about a new youth policy, a reformed youth policy, coming to life youth policy, and I'm not thinking that these things are actually coming to boot. So I would like to know, in terms of the youth policy, when we see a new directory of youth, with youth groups and community groups being built out. The members spoke about they have the resources to build out new community groups. I want to know the plan for that. So those are my two questions, Chairman, and Ministry of Youth, Sports and Community Empowerment.
Honourable Member, we're not hearing you. Honourable Minister, we're not hearing you.
I'm sorry. No, I was saying that the Honourable Member mentioned words from the Honourable Member for St. Thomas. Look, if you engage in any form of community profiling, then individuals who we term in community development as gatekeepers will come to the fore. So, in relation to what you're saying, we can identify the gatekeepers in every community if we know what exactly we're doing in terms of the community profiling process. But let me get to your question in terms of next step. And this is one that I am intimately familiar with, because this is coming from a change. This is a change of name from what was originally Project Oasis. And it moved from that to another name, and now it is being termed the Next Step Initiative, which is a program that is continuing. It has never been stopped. There was a name change, but the program is continuing. The director will provide more information, but let me say to you that, as you are aware, Project Oasis at the particular time was focused primarily on working with youth on the blocks. And for 4 years out of my journey as a youth officer, I worked nothing else than on the blocks across this country to try to provide an opportunity to reintegrate those youngsters who are on the blocks back into mainstream society. And if I do say so myself, there are hundreds or maybe 1,000 or so individuals who engaged in Project Oasis back then, and we would have seen some significant change in terms of attitude, because at that particular time, embedded in the training programs that we had on the Project Oasis were life skills. We had Dr. Ivan Henry as one of those persons who were going to the Samuel Jackman Prescott Polytechnic at the time to provide life skills in terms of anger management, finance management. A whole sweep of training was done in addition to the hard training that happened. The last administration felt it necessary to jettison Project Oasis because they believe it was a program that was only highlighting weed whackers and lawnmowers, when it was much, much deeper than that. So the Next Step Initiative is one, like I said, that is a sister program, so to speak, from Project Oasis. It is one of those programs that is providing an opportunity primarily for those persons who are unemployed to get involved in a level of training that they would not normally be able to access. And I believe, similar to what happened on the Project Oasis, you had youngsters who were entering Palmerine, who were entering Samuel Jackman Prescott Polytechnic, that did not, at the time, they were not equipped with the requisite qualifications to get in to do things like computer repairs, to do things like cooking at Palmerine. The requisite qualifications was not in place. The Barbados Labour Party government at the time felt it necessary, and we were funded to the tune at that time. I remember Prime Minister Arthur funded the program to the tune of $3 million to ensure that those persons who were interested in having a second chance had that second chance. The Next Step Initiative is similar to it. I am here for the last 5 weeks or so. The director has been one who was involved in the process, and he will be able to speak a little more about who's running the program, how much it is capitalized at this point in time, and where we will go from there. But just rest assured, Honourable Member, that the program never stops, so that information that you got in relation to the program being on pause would be considered fake news. But I will allow the director to speak to you in relation to the Next Step initiative.
Good morning. Thank you, Honourable Minister. Thank you for your question, Member of Parliament for the City. Cleviston Hunt, Director of Youth Affairs. Almost forgot that. The Minister has spoken generally about the inputs that goes into the Next Step program, and the budget for the Next Steps is $260,000, which we have identified in the estimates. As the Minister pointed out, the program is ongoing. We graduated 125 young people in the last quarter, and we are currently working with 110 young people who are going to be doing training at the Barbados Community College, as well as the Vocational Training Board, which will start during this month and go into the next 3 to 4 months. So that's where we are in relation to the actual programming for the Next Steps Training Initiative. I want to add, though, that as the MP did refer, that role that we play within the ministry in relation to groups and in relation to crime reduction through the Next Steps, that the role for the group work and the building up of groups really falls under the remit of the Youth Development Program, where our youth commissioners are actively out in the field compiling information on those groups that are still in existence, as well as the Minister has pointed out, as part of the remit that we will have during the course of this year, forming groups and registering these groups. In very short order, the ministry will be issuing some public notices also too, that we can get groups that are in the community to register with us, again, as we have done in the past, so that we can have that register of groups built out as a specific database. On the Next Steps training program, as you know, within the ministry, we are committed to developing all young people. And part of the remit for the Next Steps training program is a program that we are launching very shortly, where we're working with the SJPI to go into the prison to offer training programs, certified training programs to those persons who are incarcerated at present. All of this is part of the program that we have, the anti-violence campaign, which this ministry would have launched during the course of the last year. Well, during this financial year. And this program is one that we have had tremendous success with. The idea behind the program really is about how do we change the value systems, how do we move people away from crime and violence, how do we get them to move from a stage of pre-contemplation to contemplating about the crime and so on that we do, because as we recognize, the violence, the taking up the gun is only the presenting problem, and there are either deeper psychological or systemic issues that we need to address. So those are some of the things that we're doing. We're working with the transition unit so that we can bring more people into the program as well. The transition unit, as you may be aware, came out of the juvenile justice bill. And even though the bill has not been proclaimed, we still felt that it was important to go ahead and do the work that is required to help our young people to be diverted away from the criminal justice system. And then they can come into our ministry where we can offer them programs that will assist them in their well-being. The youth policy, if that is sufficient in relation to the next steps, we can also have other discussions, Member of Parliament, outside of this session because we are pressed with time. In terms of the youth policy,
Mr. Director, in terms of the youth policy, I will have to say that you will have to speak about that in another forum. Please wrap up in the interest of time. Thank you.
I will wrap up, sir, by just saying that in my presentation yesterday, I did say that the policy is in its second draft. We will be having the third draft on March the 12th, and we are looking to have a policy in place by July of this year. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, in the wrap-up, I wanted to hear the who is responsible. That's one of the specific
Okay,
questions.
the person who is responsible for the next steps is Mr. David Denny, our youth projects coordinator.
I want to thank the ministry, and I want to pledge my support. I would leave my other questions for you guys personally, because I have a passion also for boxing, going 3-0 for Barbados in my younger days. A colleague of mine told me I'm so passionate about so many things. As an old soul, being involved in so many things. I want to say this to you, though, as I pledge my support, Mr. Chair, to the minister, that the reason I'm asking is not to expose anything. The being on pause came from within the ministry, so I'm glad to hear it's really fake news and that the program continues. But I still have a concern, and I pledge to be an advocate for the ministry to get more funding. Because when we talk about mass-based training, we cannot talk about $260,000. And we cannot talk about 125 persons graduating and 110. It just doesn't go. So for me, I am asking so that I can know, so that I can better advocate on the ministry's behalf. So I want to thank the ministry and again, give kudos where due. Thank you very much.
If I may come back to the honourable member, he's intimately involved in this particular ministry because, if I might say so, this ministry raised him. So that is why he's so intimate. I was in the corridors when he was raised by this ministry.
Honourable members, we have just a few minutes. I'm going to allow the honourable member for St. James North to ask one question. I remind you, we will not entertain the runway approach. Please get to the point. Ask the question, we get the answer. Thank you. I am trying to assist as many members as possible. Let's work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would wish to ask in terms of St. James North, but first say that I believe that repairs to community centres should have a more strategic approach. I believe the honourable member for St. George South raised the issue, and I thank him for having toured with me the two community centres in St. James North last year, Western and Sign Hill. Thank the ministry for the repairs that were subsequently done to Sign Hill, although I don't understand why it takes so long, why you have to go through so much bureaucracy even to get simple electrical repairs. Mr. Chairman, specifically to ask on what plans does the ministry have in terms of development of community operations in St. James North. I know that last year in the estimates, robotics and coding was approved for Western Community Centre. I don't know that that has been initiated as yet. So I'm wondering about that aspect. I see that plans are in the documentation that we got for acquisition of property at 3rd Avenue, Lower Carlton, of which I know nothing about. And in that regard, sir, I would wish to support the honourable member for St. Peter, who has, during this head and on other heads, spoken to the fact that members of parliament need to be involved in these plans. I shouldn't have to read in a document that of any intention to acquire such property.
Honourable member, please put, if you have another question, put it to
yes,
the
sir.
team.
Right, so development, community development in St. James North, robotics issue, the building blocks issue. If there are plans for building blocks in St. James North, I haven't seen any, even though I've written in, suggesting an area opposite St. Albans Church. And as I said, 3rd Avenue, Lower Carlton, what is the plan with that, sir? And sir, with your indulgence, also what are the plans, any plans for sports for people with disabilities? in this country, since, of course, the general aim of this government is to make Barbados as inclusive as possible for people with disabilities. Thank you.
Honourable Member for St. James, thank you for your one questions. Let me put it that way. The officers will come to you. Now, in terms of opportunities for St. James, we are doing community work across the country, Honourable Member. So it is not a case that your particular community will be omitted from any kind of development going forward, because they're young persons across the country, and it is our mandate to touch all of them in one way or another. I'm not sure if the property that you would have identified, I think at St. Almonds, is on the seaside, but I am, again...
Yes. No, it isn't. It's on the land side.
Okay. Okay. The building blocks will come as well. My predecessor would have indicated that they're supposed to be coming to 30 constituencies. So every single constituency will be able to access building blocks. In terms of the robotics, I will get the officer from community development to speak to you in relation to that. In terms of the sports for disability, this is something that is occupying my mind. The director of the National Sports Council will speak to you in relation to that. It is not our plan to omit anyone from the workings of this particular ministry. I had a discussion in relation to those sports that we can have people with disability access, and it is something that, yes, we definitely need to broaden, and it will be. But I will allow the officers to speak to you from the community development and the director of the Sports Council in relation to plans that are in train for sports for the disability.
Bridget Marshall-Griffith, Program Coordinator. In terms of the robotics, COVID curtailed a lot of those courses that are, say, about 80% hands-on. So with a course like robotics, where persons might be sharing equipment and tools, we were not inclined to take on those courses last financial year. For the upcoming financial year, and with now that restrictions have been lifted, we are about to roll out the coding and the robotics. I mentioned that yesterday. We're going to be starting with the expertise, those persons between the ages of 13 and 18. So yes, we will be doing coding and robotics in the summer at Western and the other resource centers throughout the island. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me first start by quickly correcting the director of the Sports Council, Haley Matthews, who back at the top of the order scored that maiden World Cup century, is from St. Michael's South Central, not St. Michael's Southeast. And I want to take this opportunity to congratulate her and the entire team for that amazing win against New Zealand. But in keeping with the cricket question, the other news that we got this morning, regrettably, is that legendary spin bowler Shane Warne died suddenly from Australia, died suddenly of what was a suspected heart attack. And I know that, with your permission, I know this chamber would want to extend to the people of Australia and the entire cricketing fraternity our condolences to all cricket fans everywhere, because he was indeed a legend of the game. But seeing that he passed of a suspected heart attack, I don't want to engage in conjecture around his death, but it did make me think of something that the member for the city of Bridgetown and I were recently discussing, and that has to do with the training of coaches and trainers and people who are engaged in sport, especially intensive sport, who are training young people. to be able to act as medical first responders, to be able to administer CPR, and the availability of defibrillators. We all know that when it comes to NCDs, inactivity or too little activity is a risk, but also a lot of activity and intense sporting activity is a risk for our young people. I wanted to ask quickly, is there training of coaches, of people who are engaging young people in intense training activity to be able to act as medical first responders? Are there defibrillators available? Because sometimes you're talking about 20-something-year-olds, 18-year-olds who have cardiac incidents. So just that first question quickly, and then I just have one more.
Thank you for the question, Honourable Member. And I'm glad that you're stating your claim to the young lady. Look, training in terms of our coaches, and I will allow the director of the Sports Council to respond to you after me. But I agree with you 100%. At some point in time, I dabbled with coaching basketball, and I saw the importance of having someone at the sideline who was able to deal with injuries. I know Coach Cragwell, who we all know as the clerk of this department, one of them is Marshall, sorry, is one of those coaches at basketball that the skill sets are there in terms of being able to deal with minor issues. I remember coaching against him, and we had some guys with shoulders that were slipping out and stuff like that, and he was able to point us in the direction in terms of how we should treat to it. I agree with you 100% that if we are going to put our youngsters in charge of our coaches, that there should be a level of medical assistance that can be rendered until experts arrive. A lot of the federations would, in some cases, mandate that you have at least a level 1 coaching certificate, but I do not think that that level 1 would span any kind of medical training. But I will allow the director of the National Sports Council to answer you in relation to your question about that.
Thank you for your question, Member of Parliament for St. Michael South Central. Let me apologize for misstating where Ms. Matthews came from. Indeed, she is from St. Michael South Central, Point Gardens. Yes, the National Sports Council has been really proactive over the last few years in terms of first aid training. And only last year, all of our coaches during the pandemic, we decided, in addition to supervisory training and groundsman training, all of our coaches got emergency training through St. John's Ambulance Brigade. And that certificate lasts for 2 years. And I can see a situation where that is expanded throughout the community. I think we have had discussions over the last few months on that, and we have had some quotations on defibrillators, and we will be buying, I think, about 3 of them as soon as possible. So yes, we already have that in hand, but more than just the National Sports Council, I want to see it expanded throughout the community, because having the information and the equipment to save lives is important. So thank you for that question.
Thank you so much. And quickly to the next question. We have pavilions, sporting pavilions that fall under the Sports Council, and we also have community centers. But people in communities that have pavilions don't know that their pavilions are not community centers. What I mean to say is they see that there's a facility and they expect that there will be some activity around the pavilion or around this facility. I thank the ministry for the work that has gone on at Gully Hill. I see the chair motioning to me, but I don't know what he's saying, so I will just try to wrap up because I'm not sure.
Please do.
Yes. I thank the community, the ministry for the work that's gone on at Gully Hill. Very grateful for that. and some work that is planned in other communities, and for the visits, Minister, that you have undertaken with your team. However, across St. Michael, we have a different concern, which is that we have pavilions, and people expect to have activities there, and people expect to have programs there, and also that we have small spaces that do not have facilities. And I would like to think that even in the absence of resource center, that there are community development activities planned. I think of small spaces like Bannister Land and Flagstaff in my own constituency. Let me ask quickly, what are the plans, or are there any plans to be able to develop community-based activities around things like pavilions that are not necessarily community centers, and also in spaces, small spaces that don't have pastures and hard coats and so on? What is the plan to develop community-based activities in those communities?
Question. Honourable Minister, as you answer the question, please wrap up and move the head. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Honourable Member, I mentioned just now about being involved with Project Oasis. Back then, like you were saying, we had situations where persons were a little skeptical about doing projects with that particular target population. And we did training program, leathercraft. We did it outside in the open on the trees. We asked persons to use their garage, and we had programs inside of garages in different locations. So it is very, very possible for us to be able to do programming outside of those centers. As long as we find an area that is adequate, we can run those programs. Chair asked me to wrap. You would have heard from my team in relation to the number of training initiatives, the number of programs that are contained within this ministry to move our young people forward. The plan is to expand on every single area that we can expand, because we understand the importance of where this particular ministry is placed in the landscape of this country. And if we fail, then we will fail a generation that is coming, a generation that is in existence that we cannot allow to fall through the cracks, so to speak. So everything will be done. You have heard from the officers, like I said, in terms of what is happening. Everything will be done under my watch to ensure that we are proactive in terms of our endeavor to deal with youth, in our endeavor to deal with sports, in our endeavor to deal with community empowerment, because they go hand in hand. If you develop a youngster, then you're developing the community. If we develop in sports, you're developing the community. And the onus is on us. We are the ones who are tasked with doing it. And I am pleased, and I'm very, very pleased to be working with a group of individuals who have the knowledge and the skill sets to do what is necessary to move this particular ministry forward. Like I said, at some point in time yesterday or this morning when I opened, this is a good time for young people in the country of Barbados, because we know what is necessary to move it forward. I have walked these walls for more than 20 years, so I'm coming in with some knowledge in terms of how we should treat to certain disciplines, in terms of how we should treat to programs. I have heard members continually mention the lack of information that is coming to them, and we will open the communication channels. I will ensure that information in terms of the planning of programs that are coming from this ministry is shared with every single MP to let them be aware of what is happening. The future is bright. The sports policy is coming on stream. I have asked for some new initiatives that will only redound to the benefit of our young people. So, Chair, I am pleased, very, very pleased to be sitting here this morning in the company of my team in terms of what we have for the youth, sports, and community empowerment. And I beg that Head 91 stand par. Thank you.
The question is that Head 91, Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Community Empowerment, stand par. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Chair. I beg to move that you do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker, and beg leave to sit again.
The question is that I do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and ask for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
The chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House for until 12:15 p.m.
Did you hear what time?
12:15 p.m.
The question is that this honourable chair will be suspended until 12:15. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 12:15.